Here's the million-dollar question. Are you really saving money, or are you just spending more in disguise? Today, we're tackling the sneaky world of spaving. It's where you're chasing deals and discounts, but it's quietly draining your retirement savings. Whether it's that irresistible buy one, get one free, or the lure of free shipping, we'll uncover why the spend more, quote, save more trap is hard to escape, and how it can sabotage even the best-laid retirement plans. You're listening to Next Chapter Living, Planning Your Retirement Story with our host, Stephen Sabo. Stephen is a financial advisor with Executive Financial Group right here in Pittsburgh. If you're nearing retirement or you just want to make smarter decisions about your future, this episode is a must listen. To learn more or get personalized guidance, be sure to visit executivefinancialgroup.com or give them a call at 724-283-2806. Hey, Stephen, how are you?
Hey, Alyssa, I'm doing very well. Thanks. About yourself?
I'm doing okay now that I get my, coffee in me and maybe wake up a
Yeah, that's
bit.
right. I hear you. It was snowy this morning. I didn't want to get out of bed, so it was one of those things I was dragging a little bit myself before we got on here. So,
and I think we should get bonus points for recording on a holiday, right? That should count for something.
That's right. We're in here on a holiday, working hard. I have appointments after this, so it was one of those things where, I know a lot of my clients, they have off on a day like today. Mm-hmm. So this might be their only day to get in and see us. So I'm trying hard.
That alone says so much about your work ethic and
That's right.
Why I so enjoy sitting down and having these conversations with you. This one hits a little close to home, the idea of spaving. I have most certainly fallen victim to the, spend $10 more to get the free shipping, and I'll be darned, I spend the $10. To get the free shipping. Why do we fall for it? And how does it follow us into retirement?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. My wife would like to call this girl math, is what she says. This is girl math. If I only have to spend $50 more and I'll save the $4.99 on shipping. So, but this is something that happens a lot, and I can't sit here and say that I haven't been the victim of this myself. I do this frequently. I'm online, shopping for something, and I look and it's like, oh, if only you spent $200, you'd get the free shipping or whatever it is.
Right.
And these things are by design. Obviously there's been teams that have studied this, and this is why they do these deals, and you see them so frequently, especially when you're online shopping. It's because, there is a psychological aspect to this that, oh, look at that. If I could just a few more dollars and I won't have to pay the shipping. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things where it can be a trap. It can get you into trouble, if you aren't paying attention to it. People, I think, get addicted to the saving aspect of it rather than looking at the bigger picture and saying, well, hey, I'm spending more inevitably to save this. So they want to save those few dollars, but in order to do that, they have to spend a little bit more. And, this can be detrimental to people in their retirement because a lot of the times you're maybe on a not quite so much a fixed budget, like, hey, this is, all I have is my Social Security and that's it. But a lot of the times we're trying to stick to a plan, and especially for a lot of our clients, we have a fair amount of clients that have saved enough money and they can live comfortably and they're going to be okay and they'll be able to pass money along to the next generations. But it's not so much that if there are mistakes or things happen that it couldn't derail them. And so we need to be careful of what we are spending. And it's easy to feel like you want to spend just a few extra bucks here and there. But, if you sat down and did the math, it can add up, so an extra $100 a month, that's $1,200 a year. And if you took that and invested it and got a return on that over so long, you really see the difference in how much you're actually spending versus how much it could be if you were saving it or anything like that. And so, we want to make sure that people aren't going outside of their budgets and that they aren't going crazy. And, because these things could, potentially derail your retirement or make you have to cut back on something, which we don't want to see.
It reminds me of that time my husband and I sat down and, when we first were married and we were doing our budget and we looked at that nagging coffee habit. It was just like, oh, it's,
Sure.
$5 here. It's $5. And then you add it up and you look at what you're spending a month between the two of us. And we were just like, we can make coffee at home.
That's right. That's right.
A whole lot cheaper. And it's not that you have to go without, we still enjoy a coffee date, but we're much more strategic about it now than we were when it was just sort of, whenever we drove by, it was so easy to pull through that drive-through. The sign was calling my name. And then you sit down and do the math and you're like, oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My wife, she has the Starbucks app. There's one on the way to her office. I like making coffee at home. I'm not a huge
Hmm.
Starbucks fan. There is a place around where we live that I like to stop and go every once in a while, but I like to make coffee at home. And so, we joke about that too. And I'll say, hey, look, I've already brewed a pot. Do you really need to stop at Starbucks? But
Right.
I guess it just doesn't quite hit the same.
They just put them so conveniently located. It's just right when you need it,
Yeah,
Stephen.
of
I hear
course.
her. I feel her pain.
Yes, of course. I know. That's what I've heard. So that's okay. I guess that's what I'm working hard for, right?
Right, exactly. That's why you're here on a holiday.
That's right.
Well, what strategies are you utilizing to help retirees sort of recognize those spaving habits that they might have? And how do you, I guess, start that, what I would imagine is a delicate conversation? Because to
Sure.
your point, you don't want people to feel like they're living without. They've spent their whole lives working to get to this point. But at the same time, you don't want them to self sabotage and cut years off their retirement potential because they have poor spending habits.
Sure. At the end of the day, I'm not my client's parent, right? And
Right.
so, but it is that kind of parent relationship where you want to have to teach your clients and say, hey, look, there are consequences to things. And, if the consequences are the good outweighs the bad, then hey, okay, it's all right. But sometimes you have to bring it up and you have to say, look, I'm not telling you that you're not allowed to do this. You can do whatever you want with your money. But
Hmm.
I want you to realize what is happening. Like you said, the patterns, right? You're thinking that it's only a few bucks here or there, or a couple $100 here and there. But when you add it up over time and you look back, like you said about, the coffee habit, it can really be a lot and it can be eye opening to people. And,
Hmm.
and so, one of the first things that we do whenever we sit down with clients is in trying to come up with a retirement plan for them is budgeting. And so reviewing that budget, yearly or whenever we meet with them and saying, hey, look, are we still on track? What are we bringing in? What's going out? To make sure that we aren't running into those is very important. We have clients sometimes that getting into retirement, we might help them look at their credit cards and maybe they have some credit card debt and we're going to come up
Mm.
with a plan to get them out of the debt. But we have to teach them and say, hey, look, if you continue the way that you're doing things now, you're going to be right back in this same spot with $20,000 or $30,000 worth of credit card debt, which you can't afford. We already did some things maybe that set you back a little bit in order to get you out of this situation because that's just a spiraling kind of situation with the credit cards. But if we don't change the habits and if we don't change how we're doing things moving forward, then we're going to be right back into this. And so, keeping that budget top of the mind and front and center whenever we do have these annual meetings or quarterly or whatever it is with the client, we want to look at, all right, let's break it down. What are we spending? And so
Mm.
if it's hidden in the credit card, well, let's look at what we're spending on a credit card every month. Is it food? Is it bills? Is it little extra treats for yourself? Those are all kind of things that we want to take a look at and make sure, that we're staying on track with because we don't want to see people get off track. And, it's easy, especially with those small dollar items to just,
Mhm.
okay, well, a couple bucks here, a couple bucks there, but it can add up quickly. And so, we want to make sure that that's front and center with them and, encourage them again. Hey, look, we want you to enjoy retirement, but in order to enjoy retirement, you might need to cut back on some of these things that aren't quite as necessary so that you really can experience the full enjoyment of this and not have to penny pinch or do anything, down the road. And hey, retirement for some people can be a long-term game.
Mhm.
you know so when you look at it that way and you say, hey, look, you might have 20 more years of this and here's how much money you have, that can be eye-opening for people as well.
Sure. I think one of the things that helped my husband and I the most, because the word budget to a lot of people, myself included, feels like this four-letter word. Like you're telling me I can't
Yes.
have this thing because of
Yes.
a budget. We called it a spending plan. And just
Yes.
that verbiage change did so much psychologically to go, no, like we're making a conscious choice to spend our money in this way and not this way versus budget just had this negative connotation, like
Yeah.
it was somehow restricting me. So I throw that out there to say if somebody else like me has that knee jerk reaction of, I don't want to be told what I can and can't do with my hard earned money,
Right.
maybe relabeling it as something else might help.
That's a great idea, and I think too, because a lot of the times it pits, right? It puts a couple against each other when
Hmm.
you say budget and then you start. They point out, well, you're spending on this and you're doing on
Yes,
that. And really it's about the overall kind of plan, right? The spending plan, if you will. Hey,
right.
look, we all want to have a little bit of fun and spend our money how we want to, but here's the ultimate goal.
Do you think the fact that we are more of a card using society has made a difference in the ease of which we can lose track of some of these expenses because it's not cash coming out of our wallet like it used to be?
Yeah.
It's, oh, I'm just going to swipe the card. And to your point,
Yep.
I put it on a credit card and then I don't realize until the end of the month that, oh, I spent $1,000 on these miscellaneous things that I don't necessarily have in my budget because I didn't feel the money leave the
Yeah.
wallet.
Absolutely. It's no surprise that we've gone towards things like tap to pay and everything
Hmm.
like that. Again, I talk about these things. These credit card companies, these big institutions spend millions and millions of dollars studying these things and studying people's psychology to realize that, hey, that's exactly right. Tap to pay. I use it because it's very convenient.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, I click a button on my phone. I don't even have to pull out the card anymore. I'm
Right.
clicking two buttons on my phone. You tap and then you don't look, right? You go about your day and it might be the end of the month before you're looking and saying, all right, well, what is my bill to pay off? And you're going, oh boy, this is more than what I had anticipated. And so that certainly makes a big thing, and unfortunately, we're moving away from cash in society. You can't go to a sporting event with cash anymore. I know pretty
Right.
much all of those places. And, on one hand, there's a convenience to it and it does make things easier and you don't have to fumble around with bills and, they're getting rid of the pennies and things like that. So,
Right.
it does make it easier, but it certainly makes it a lot easier for you to slip into that trap of spending without really realizing how much you're doing, or breaking that budget. If you said, hey, I have this $500 in my pocket and this is all that I can spend for the rest of the month, you're going to look at that a lot differently than just saying, hey, well, this is only 10.99. I'll just click and then you don't add it up. You can't see it kind of minimizing how much you have left. So
So the convenience requires more diligence on
that's
our behalf.
That's right, and it's getting tougher and tougher because your mind is drawn in a million different places. So that convenience, you just do it, and then you're on to something else. It's a
You've
lot
forgotten
harder.
about it.
That's right.
Talk to me a little bit about how poor spaving habits can intersect with other financial risks, such as longevity issues. We talk
Sure,
about all the time longevity. We could live 30 years in retirement.
sure,
God willing, we're happy, we're healthy, we get a 30-year retirement. But we
right.
also have inflation that we have to factor in. When those three come together, they feel like a perfect storm.
You just said it, whenever you live a longer time and, a lot of the times these things are habitual habits. You're just doing them. And so you get into this kind of mode and even if it's just a little bit of time, well, over 20 or 30 years that you're doing this can really add up. And then you add in inflation. Well, it started as just a little $5 habit
Mm.
here and there. But that $2 cup of coffee now becomes $4. And then, from there, we mentioned this before we got on air about the compounding effect, right?
Yes.
And so it's just like your investments growing and building that compounding interest. Well, it can work against you when you're spending. If you were spending a little bit and then again, the two becomes four, then four becomes eight, and then it just
Mm.
grows and it snowballs. And before you know it, you've built this into your lifestyle and it's hard to break those habits. It really is. I know that in the past, and I can't remember exactly if I'm saying this right, but I think it's over like 21 days or something. If you do something consistently for so many
Hmm.
days in a row, you start to build a habit. And whenever people do these things and they really aren't paying attention to it, after so long, now it becomes a habit. And then that habit, like you said, with inflation in time, it can really add up. And so you need to make sure because that can be the perfect storm to ruin your financial abilities in retirement. You may not have as much to spend on healthcare or on the things that you need because you've been, kind of doing this over such a period of time and it can erode your savings. It can bite into your cash and things like that. So then you got to draw more from your investments or you have to,
Hmm.
do these things. And so it can be difficult. You need to really watch yourself.
I wanted to put it in perspective as we wrap up. You mentioned the $100 a month, and that's $1,200 a year.
Yep.
Well, if that same $1,200 a year had been invested at 7% annually for 20 years, that's $50,000
Yeah.
of potential loss. So I think that sort of puts it in perspective because it's so easy to go, like you said, it's just $4 here, $6 here, $10 there. But you forget the power of compounding and what that money
Yes.
can be doing for you if invested wisely.
Yeah, I think, that's a really great strategy to kind of do because it can be pretty shocking when you sit down and you actually start adding things up and you look at it and you say, oh my goodness, I spent $10,000 doing this. And, it almost puts a sickness over you and you say,
Mm-hmm.
I cannot believe that this is where we are. So sometimes sitting down with somebody and adding up and actually doing the math so you can put the numbers right in front of them to see can be an eye-opening experience.
Small leaks can still sink big ships.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. So, yeah, you just have to be careful.
Well, if you want to make sure that your ship is not leaking and you're ready to write the next chapter in your retirement story, head on over to executivefinancialgroup.com. You can schedule a complimentary consultation with Stephen and his team. You can also call them at 724-283-2806. And of course, be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode. Stephen, I always enjoy chatting with you, even if you make me rethink my coffee habits.
Well, I appreciate that. I always have a great time chatting with you as well, Alyssa. And I have my own issues and my own habits as well. So we'll keep it to
We'll
that.
work on it together.
Yeah, that's right. That's all right. We're in this together. So we'll see if we can't tackle that. But no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Yeah, thank you. You as well.
The opinions expressed by Stephen Sabo and guests on this podcast are their own and do not reflect the opinions of this podcast station. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Past performance cannot be used as an indicator to determine future results. Any strategies mentioned may not be suitable for everyone. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. Before acting on any information mentioned, please consult with a qualified tax or investment advisor to determine if it is suitable for your specific situation. This program is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information with regard to subject covered. Investment advisory services offered through Virtue Capital Management, LLC, VCM, a registered investment advisor. VCM and Executive Financial Group are independent of each other. Pennsylvania Insurance License number 670429. Any guarantees mentioned are backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges as described in the annuity contract. Stephen Sabo and/or Executive Financial Group are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency.